Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Rachel Bussman, and I'm a clinical psychologist at the Child Mind Institute. We're a national nonprofit that supports children and families with gold standard mental health care, advice, and resources, all online and accessible to everyone. You can learn more about the resources we have available for families during the coronavirus crisis, including telehealth evaluations and treatment, by visiting childmind.org/coronavirus. Today, I'd like to talk to you about parenting during the time of coronavirus, and specifically speaking about selective mutism and social anxiety. We are going to be answering your questions as you post them in the chat feature of this Facebook Live. And as we are broadcasting live every day, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will be collecting these questions and making sure to answer them if we don't get a chance to do that today. So you can definitely go ahead and send your questions, and I'm happy to start answering them. Also, I'll just let you know that I have a lot of questions already written down that you've sent to us, so I'm excited to answer them today. And again, just go to our website at childmind.org/coronavirus for these resources, and a lot of the resources we will put into the chat feature during this broadcast. Additionally, before I answer questions, please visit the Selective Mutism Association at selectivemutism.org for also very helpful resources. So let's jump right in with some questions. So first of all, I just want to say that this is a really difficult time for everyone. And so families with children with selective mutism definitely understand this, especially since maybe the first thing you're thinking is, my child speaks really comfortably at home. And so it's really easy for my child to be comfortable in the home and speak at home. And so I'm really worried about that not having face-to-face sessions or not having exposures out of the house is going to set my child back, or I'm going to experience some kind of regression for them. So I want to let you know first and foremost that we understand that this is hard and it really is a challenging time. And at the same time, we actually know a lot about internet delivered treatment, so that, for example, if you have a treatment provider, you should definitely look into having internet delivered treatment, because it can actually be a great opportunity to continue working on goals. But additionally, this is really a time for just calibrating where you are in terms of the stress and the changes in the environment, and that I'm not so worried about regression. I'm really just interested in helping people calibrate to the current situation and then figure out how to keep progress going even in this unusual time where we're home. So with that said, there are a lot of ways to do exposures right in your home. So a couple of examples that people have shared already involve things like picking up the phone and calling a store just to see if they're open, or if they offer delivery or curbside pickup. So that might, on the one hand, seem like something your child might not yet be able to do, but there are lots of small steps that can be taken to even meet that goal. So your child can stand next to you while you're making the phone call. They can read one line of a script that you've already written out for what they could contribute verbally. Another great example is being able to respond to a text that a friend sends, or one email a day from a teacher, or to give a thumbs up in a chat box. These are things that can be very difficult with a child with social anxiety or selective mutism. And the important thing to remember when starting to think about exposure ideas is start small and focus on one thing at a time. So with that in mind, there are a bunch of things that we can talk about today, and a lot of the questions that have already been asked have to do with fade-ins with teachers and school and other people. So just for those who might be tuning in and might not be sure that they know what a fade-in is, a fade-in is what we talk about when we discuss passing the talking baton from one person to another. So meaning your child speaks comfortably with you already, and maybe your plan prior to this coronavirus crisis was to work with a teacher and pass the talking baton to them. So we would call the teacher a new speaking partner. You can still actually work on that while you're in the home. So while it's not traditional and it's certainly not what you had envisioned, it definitely can be done. So it starts with education to the school or to the teachers or other people about what a fade-in is and what it's going to look like. So that means that there are a couple ways you can do that education. One is for you as the parent to provide education to the school, let's say. We'll talk about the school in this example, but you can really substitute the word school for neighbor or friend or peer. So you might be giving the school some information that you've already learned, let's say from a treatment provider or from some resources on our website or from the Selective Mutism Association. So you might have a Zoom meeting or a video chat where you explain what a fade-in will be like. So first I'm going to have you on the video screen, Mrs. Smith, and I'm going to actually interact with my child, Jackson, and we're just going to play, but we're going to have you up on the screen. And we don't actually need you to do anything right now. Alternatively, you may want a more formal training session or education session, and that can often be done by treatment providers. So, for example, I run our Selective Mutism program at the Child Mind Institute, and all of our treatment providers are providing telehealth and education to schools. We've been in contact with them. We've had 504 meetings and IEP meetings, so it's definitely possible. So once you set the framework for what you're going to do during one of these sessions, then the next step would be to start a fade-in. I know a lot of questions that have come up is, I'm just really overwhelmed. I'm not even sure how to start a fade-in. So if you're totally new to this, or if you've done this in an office and you're a little bit hesitant about doing it in your home with a computer, know that this is kind of new territory for a lot of people, and we want to make sure to calibrate our expectations. So it may be that the first time you do a fade-in involves you having your computer open, but not even connected to anybody else. And you and your child are just playing in the room, and you say something like, Jackson, I keep using Jackson because that's actually my son's name, but Jackson, we're going to be playing today, and we're going to be practicing Brave Talking with Mrs. Smith. She's not here today, but I'm just going to have my computer here open so that when we're ready, we'll be able to have her visible. And then you would just start playing with your child and practice talking with them just as you normally would, playing some kind of preferred activity or game or coloring. And so remembering what we talk about in fade-ins, which is we don't want to advance in a step before we've reached some level of success where you are. So maybe you have a piece of paper with some check marks that you're using for playing with you or talking with you, even though, again, kids talk just fine at home with their parents, but you want to get them primed for the next step. So the next step might be to actually practice in a very low stakes environment. So you might say, we're practicing and we're going to be chatting with Mrs. Smith soon, but we're actually going to chat with Grandma today. Now, maybe your child already talks to Grandma, and that's great. You'd open the computer, and you might, for a younger child, say you're going to use some Zoom magic or some video magic and Zoom the person in. That's what we've been doing for our groups. And then they have them come up, and you do the same thing that you were doing before. Check marks for talking in front of Grandma. There are a lot of games you can play with actually two people. So if you're on Zoom or another video platform, often there's a screen sharing function, and I am not tech savvy. And if I can figure it out, I promise you can too with a little bit of practice. And so there are games on websites like tabletopia.com, or you can Google games you can play with two people online. You can also play the game I've been playing, which is guess what I have in my hand, because you can't see it. And so you might say, Grandma, we have something here, and it is, Jackson, is it yellow or it's a different color? And he says, it's yellow. Oh, it's yellow. Thanks for telling me. Tell Grandma if it smells really good or it doesn't have a smell. And just to show you, I'm holding some flowers. So you can really be creative with a real game or just play with what you have in the room. But again, the idea is to just build up to what might come next, which would be a fade-in with the teacher. And again, we could probably spend lots of time talking about all the baby steps in between, getting to the point where your child might answer a question from the teacher or a new speaking partner, but just know there are lots of different steps. So the first step might be that you have Mrs. Smith, and your child's playing over to the side and you interact with Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith, we miss you so much. It's so nice to see you. We've been playing so many games. We have been playing Guess What I Have in My Room. We've been playing hot and cold by hiding something in one corner of the room. We've actually figured out how to screen share on Nick Jr. or Disney, and you can play puzzles or games. And then the parent would start interacting. You would interact with your own child before you had the teacher do anything. And so the idea would be very slow steps with the expectation that we really only want to do a very small amount of anything at one time. Meaning you would want the teacher to maybe start paying attention to what you're doing, or maybe comment if your child answers you, even if the teacher can't hear your child. So if Jackson said, I'm going to turn the next card, and you do what we call repeating or reflecting. Oh, yes, you're going to turn the card. The teacher then has sort of heard that and could say, oh, great telling, Mom, or, oh, this seems like such a fun game. So the idea with fade-ins is that it's slow and it's systematic and it's repeated. Now, you might be wondering, because this has been asked as well, I don't know that my teacher or my school is going to be available to do any kind of real-time interaction. I can tell you from talking to some of our clinicians today and patients, we have schools that are doing really brief, a few minutes of FaceTime with kids multiple times a week. You can do breakout rooms in Zoom where it's one-on-one interaction. It doesn't need to happen every day. No, but brief and repeated, I think, is much more effective than trying to do some kind of marathon session. So that's a bit about fade-ins. I want to talk a little bit about participation in Zoom or classroom-based activities and how to break that down into a much smaller step. Because one of the questions we also had was, there's a lot of expectation for my child or teenager to participate in group or class-based activities, and my child just isn't anywhere near ready to do that. And so before you say something like, or your child says something like, I'm just not going to do it, you can absolutely help your child, if they're older, identify their own goal or make a bravery ladder. And it could be fancy, or it can be what I'm doing right now, which is just building an actual ladder, and on the rungs of the ladder, putting something super, super easy, like typing, hitting send when the parent sends an email just to the teacher asking a question that the child has about their work. Probably easy, and going up and up and up in incremental steps. And so it could be that your child is observing the classroom doing a group presentation or having a group discussion, and they don't yet participate. Maybe the child types in a chat field a question that's been pre-planned with the teacher, that they already know that the answer is correct, or they already know that the teacher knows it's going to come, so that there's really very low stakes in terms of correctness or getting it right. And so those kinds of things can be practiced, definitely, just like we would instruct this to be practiced at school. Similarly, just hitting a like button or a raise hand function, easy for kids who don't have difficulty with feeling embarrassed or on the spot, but that can be super difficult for kids with social anxiety or SM. So planning those things ahead of time or making it a step on the ladder would be great. I've actually worked with some kids, and our team has worked with some kids who've been having a lot of success making short videos and sending them to a teacher. And you might be thinking, wait a second, that seems like a very hard step. And it is. And at the same time, in your own home with your child has high likelihood that they would record a video for you first, with the understanding that you'll delete it. So you have to be honest, and you can't lie to your kids. So if you say, we're going to practice making a video, and then we're going to delete it. So let's make a video, let's watch it together, and let's delete it. If you do that a couple times and then say, next step on the ladder, we're going to send that video to, you tell me, Jackson, who would be easier to send that to, Grandma or Aunt Susie? And then maybe you go up to a preferred peer and then send it to the teacher. So there's lots of repetition and steps that can be implemented all along that what we call a fear hierarchy or a fear ladder. Okay, I'm going to look at some other questions that we have because I'm getting them as we speak. We just take a look. Okay. So another question that's come up that I really do want to answer, even though it digresses a tiny bit from SM, is just children having fears, night terrors or sleeping fears or not wanting to leave the house. And I want to remind everybody on the call that fears in children sometimes spike a little bit, or fears that had gone away, you might see perk back up in a time of stress. And so it's not uncommon for that to happen. And at the same time, we want to think in our mind, what behaviors are we engaging in and reinforcing as a parent now to set really good habits? So for example, let's say your child's having a lot of sleep difficulties and coming into your room in the middle of the night, and it's just easier to let them sleep with you midway through the night. That's 100% fine as a decision, especially if it's made with intention. So for example, if you say, I gotta get sleep. If my child comes in the middle of the night with a nightmare or a sleep problem, I'm just gonna let them sleep here. That's fine, as long as it's an intentional decision, and know that that might make getting your child back to their bed harder. On the other hand, if you've decided, you know what, this is causing a lot of stress. I'm not sleeping well. My child's not sleeping well. I need to spend the next several days getting my child back in their bed. You might, now this is not going to be fun, but is effective, that if your child comes into your room in the middle of the night, you might be inclined to just let them come in your bed, but you might decide and take turns with your partner if you have one. Say, I'm going to walk you back to your room and I'm going to stay in here for a few minutes and help your child get settled back in their bed. That can be a very effective strategy if you've decided that's what we want to work on right now. So the important part here is that you can't do everything at one time. And so if sleep is a problem and speaking is a problem, or sleep is a problem and engaging in remote learning is a problem, you might say, I'm going to focus on one thing today or one thing this week, because we just have a finite amount of resources, and we need to be able to conserve those resources. Another question that's coming up is wondering about sort of a broader question about selective mutism and sort of its development. So selective mutism typically isn't characterized by just showing up overnight or showing up sort of after a long period of talking in a lot of situations. It's not one of those disorders that just seems to pop up overnight. And so while we definitely see kids have selective mutism and it hasn't ever been diagnosed before, it's not really typical that we would just see this kind of presentation out of the blue. That being said, sometimes there are situations where a school and family haven't had seamless communication, or the child is early in their schooling itself, and so there hasn't been a whole lot of information shared about how the child's speaking in other environments, right? So reminding yourself that as a parent, you often have your child speaking just fine at home. And if they speak just fine with other family members or in other social situations, you can definitely not know you might not know if the child is having difficulty speaking in those other environments. But sometimes we see kids in stressful environments who are developing anxiety or mood disorders withdraw in general. And so we do want to be aware of kids withdrawing and things like that. Another question that's popping up is in regard to the treatment that we offer at the Childmind Institute. And I will say that in terms of our selective mutism treatment, we are running our regular treatment via telehealth, meaning that we are offering evaluations, we are offering our coaching sessions to parents, and we are offering our selective mutism weekly groups. It's actually starting today, and we're doing that via Zoom. So, and if you have a treatment provider already, you should ask them if that's something that they're offering as well. And so you can definitely, as a reminder, if you're just joining us, we're talking about selective mutism and parenting during the coronavirus crisis. So you should definitely check out our website at childmind.org/coronavirus. And you should also visit the Selective Mutism Association. So this is a great question that's coming up, and I love it. So my son has to sing a song for class, and he wants me to sing with him in the video. Is this okay? I love this question, and it might be an exposure for you as a parent, because let's just face it, doing things in front of a camera or doing things in front of a person, another set of people, can be anxiety provoking. I actually think that singing with your child is a beautiful accommodation. And what I mean by accommodation is doing something temporarily as an intermediate step toward the ultimate goal. So let's say the ultimate goal is for your child, I'm not going to say the name, but let's say Johnny, to sing during music class without a parent present. But right now, Johnny's going to sing with parent. I think that's a great idea. And you could say, Johnny, I'm going to be right here with you, and I'm going to be on camera, or I'm not going to be on camera, and we're going to sing together. Let's practice together, because singing together means two voices at one time. And you could practice, and actually, as your child's singing, you can sort of fade your volume a little bit. You don't want to do that if you've promised them that you're going to stay voluble the whole time, because that wouldn't be honest. But you definitely can do that as an accommodation. And I think that that can be really nice also to model for your kids, because a lot of us have anxiety about a bunch of different things. You can model for your child how doing something is hard for you, and you're going to do it anyway, despite feeling uncomfortable. I think that for teenagers, I know I've talked about what sounds like younger kids, and I want to just mention that for older kids, one of the questions that's come up for me is, my teenager and her friends or his friends are doing a lot of TikTok videos and doing a lot of video chatting, and my child just feels really overwhelmed with that, or my child just is saying she or he doesn't want to. What should I do? And so I think this is a really, again, nice opportunity to find sort of that middle path and talk with your teen especially. So the older the child, the more you want to have a transparent conversation. And so saying to your teenager, hey, I've noticed all these like TikTok videos, and this is where humor can be helpful. So you could say, look, I really don't understand this whole TikTok thing. Like, what is it about it, or what's so fun about it? Joining your child or your teenager in the things they find funny and engaging and interesting is going to go a long way. And so let's say your child says, well, I want to, but I can't. Well, that's a great invitation to say, well, let's break this down. First of all, who would you feel comfortable sending one to? Well, nobody. Well, I'm sure, would you send one to me? Let's do one together. How about I'll do one and I'll be super silly. You can, in fact, instruct me, mom, on what to do in my TikTok video. And again, exposure for the parent, showing how you're willing to do something uncomfortable, and really model for it. And again, take really small steps. The other thing might be to say to your teen, I don't expect you to do all of these things. In fact, don't do all these things, but let's pick one or two that you're willing to do and able to do. The last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to wrap this up. I can't believe how much time flies when we're having conversations. One is just asking, can telehealth work? It just doesn't feel the same as face-to-face sessions. So I can definitely say this. It isn't the same as face-to-face sessions. So we're just not going to try to say that it is. If you're interested in research and you're someone who really wants to get into this field, you can visit pcit.org. So that's Parent-Child Interaction Therapy's website, and look up internet-delivered PCIT, and you can find out about internet-delivered telehealth. However, we do know that actually internet-delivered treatment can definitely be effective. And for us in our team thinking about selective mutism, there's an advantage to having your child in your home where they're the most comfortable. And there's actually a lot that can be done in that environment, practicing with family members, extended family. And so I actually think it's a unique opportunity to do some exposures and to stay creative and engaged with your child. We are going to post resources for sure. As a reminder, please go to childmind.org/coronavirus to get tips and strategies and articles. You can sign up for a tip of the day. You'll have a lot of different articles and resources that are available. Please visit the Selective Mutism Association at selectivemutism.org. I want to thank you again for joining me. I really hope it was helpful. And remember that we're here at the Childmind Institute at 10 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, Eastern Standard Time, to answer your questions. These are all recorded, so if you're not in our time zone or if this time doesn't work for you, you can view it later. We're here to help you with the mental health and parenting needs during this coronavirus crisis, no matter where you are. We're borderless and virtual, and we have resources to help you. Please join us at childmind.org/coronavirus. Stay safe and be well, and have a good weekend.